While my daughter was setting the table at Christmas, my sister recorded a video of her and posted it on Facebook. "Look at this loser's kid. She's young and a servant." My parents laughed. I got angry, and we left. The next day my sister wrote, "Why can't I withdraw $900 from your account?" I smiled and replied, Christmas at my parents' house had become unbearable over the years. It wasn't just the awkward tension or the fake cheer. It was the quiet, constant bullying, the kind no one calls out because it's masked as family banter. But it wasn't banter. It was Rebecca picking people apart, and everyone else laughing just enough to keep the peace. She needed someone to humiliate every year. One year it was our cousin who had just gone through a divorce. Another year, it was our uncle for gaining weight. The year before it had been me. But this year she chose my daughter. My daughter is 8. He still believes in good things. She still thinks family means something, and she adores Christmas. We'd spent days getting ready together. She helped me mash potatoes, kneaded the dough for our dinner rolls, and kept checking on the ham in the oven like it was her own project. She even wanted to wear her red sweater with the little white buttons that she calls the fancy one. She was so proud to help me carry everything in. Rebecca took one look at our food and said loud enough for everyone to hear that I still cook like a 50s housewife with no internet. Our mom chuckled. Our dad just kept watching the football game. My daughter didn't seem to notice. Rebecca had a way of making everything sound like a joke. She asked my daughter if she'd been promoted to head servant this year. Then she leaned over and whispered something to my mom and they both laughed. My daughter was busy folding napkins into triangles and lining them up just right. She didn't say anything, just kept working. Then I saw Rebecca with her phone out filming. At first I thought maybe she was taking a family video, something normal, but I heard her laugh, then whisper something to my dad and hand him the phone. They both laughed. I knew. I walked over and held my hand out. She didn't want to give it to me, but I took it anyway. It was a video of my daughter at the table smoothing down napkins, carefully setting forks. The caption on Facebook read, "Look at this loser's kid. She's young and a servant." It had already been posted. People had already liked it. I looked at Rebecca and told her to delete it. She smirked, so I grabbed her by the hair and pulled her into the hallway. It wasn't even about anger. It was instinct. Years of biting my tongue all came up at once. She was yelling, but I didn't care. I stood there and waited until she deleted it. No one stepped in. Not my mom. Not my dad. Not even when Rebecca yelled that I was insane. I told my daughter we were leaving. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said we were done. My daughter looked up at me and nodded. That was all. We put on our coats and walked out. No one followed us. No one said goodbye. Back at home, I made us hot cocoa. My daughter said she liked being with just me better. Anyway, later that night when she was asleep, I sat in the kitchen and cried into my hands. Not just for what happened, but for all the years I had let people like Rebecca make me smaller. I wondered how many times my daughter had noticed and just didn't say anything. That night, something in me died. Or maybe something finally woke up. The next morning my phone buzzed. "Rebecca, why can't I withdraw $900 from your account?" I stared at the screen and started to laugh. A real laugh this time. Then I called her and said I didn't want her in my life anymore. And I meant it. He thought I was bluffing. Rebecca always believed she had leverage over me. For years, she'd been taking small things, borrowing money, staying over for a few days that turned into weeks, using my Netflix, asking for rides when she had a car. I always said yes. After my husband died, I think I just wanted someone to stick around, even if they were terrible company. But this time was different. I meant it when I told her she'd never see another dollar from me again. The morning after Christmas, she sent 3 texts before 9 a.m., all variations of the same thing. "Hey, I think your account's not working. I can't take out the $900. Then a voice memo. Then, a missed call. By noon, she called again and I picked up. She started with, "Something's up with your bank." Like we were on the same team. When I told her I removed her access, she laughed. That fake laugh she always does when she's trying to stay calm. She asked if I was seriously doing this because of some Facebook thing. I didn't even respond, just let the silence stretch. She said she was willing to move past it if I apologized for putting my hands on her, and wired the $900 like usual. I told her I wasn't interested in being part of her life anymore, that she should start figuring out how to live within her means without using me as backup. She went quiet for a second. Then came the insults. She said I was emotionally unstable, that this was about my dead husband, not her, that I was isolating myself and turning into some bitter shell of a woman. She said my daughter wouldn't even remember that table-setting moment in a week, and that I was the one traumatizing her by making it into a drama. I hung up for the rest of the day. The messages didn't stop. She tried everything: guilt, manipulation, even vague threats. She said she'd talk to our parents and let them decide how to handle this, like she was taking it to some imaginary family court. I put my phone on silent and spent the evening baking cookies with my daughter. She didn't know anything was wrong. We played music and danced around the kitchen. The next morning, someone knocked on the door at 8:15. I opened it, and there she was, full makeup like she was ready for a job interview. She didn't even wait to be invited in. Just pushed past me and said, "We need to talk. I think you're blowing everything way out of proportion." I didn't respond. She started walking around my kitchen like it was hers, talking fast. Said she understood I was upset. Said the post was meant to be funny. That our parents thought I overreacted. Then she paused, gave me this soft fake smile and said, "But I'm here to forgive you." Forgive me. She sat down like she was doing me a favor, opened her phone and casually said, "So, if we can fix that $900 situation, I'll consider it water under the bridge." I told her, "No." He stared at me for a second like I was joking. Then she leaned forward and said, "Are you seriously doing this to prove you're not a loser? That your kid's not a loser?" I slapped her, not out of rage, out of something deeper. Years of swallowing comments, staying silent, keeping peace for people who didn't deserve it. I opened the front door and pointed outside. She left without a word. That evening, my daughter asked me if her aunt was mad. I said we were making new rules now, and rule 1 was we don't let people treat us like that anymore. She nodded and went back to coloring. The next morning, I got the call I was waiting for. My parents, they didn't ask what happened. They just said we needed to find a compromise. When my parents called the next morning, I knew what it would be about before I even picked up. It was my dad who spoke first, which was rare. Usually it was my mom smoothing things over, doing her best impression of someone who didn't want to take sides, even though she always did. But this time, it was my dad's voice, low and firm, asking if I had time to come over and talk through everything. I asked plainly if Rebecca was going to be there. He said yes, like it was obvious, and followed it up with, "She wants to work it out." That was the moment I realized I wasn't being invited over to be heard. I was being summoned to be scolded. "So," I said, "okay." It wasn't weakness. It was curiosity. I wanted to see how far they'd been to protect her. I wanted to hear it all said to my face so I could stop doubting whether I was overreacting. I wanted to sit there and look at them and understand once and for all what role I actually played in this family. I told my daughter we were going to Grandma and Grandpa's house again. She asked if her aunt would be there. I said yes. She didn't look excited, but she didn't ask questions either. She brought a book with her, and a pack of markers, and said she'd sit quietly if it was going to be grown-up stuff. When we arrived, Rebecca's car was already in the driveway. I parked behind her, and for a second, I just sat there looking at the front door. I think I already knew it was going to go wrong. My daughter reached over, unbuckled her seatbelt, and said, "Let's just get it over with." Inside it was exactly as I expected. Rebecca was on the couch with her legs curled up, sipping coffee like she was at a spa. My mom stood up quickly and gave me a nervous smile, and my dad nodded. Once like this was some kind of mediation, and I was the wild card. We sat. My daughter curled up in the corner with her book and didn't look up once. I remember thinking how strange it was. The contrast, her innocence, her silence, and the venom I could feel bubbling in the room before anyone even said a word. My mom started. She said she was sad to see us fighting, especially around the holidays. That things had clearly gotten out of hand. That emotions were high. I listened, said nothing. Then my dad cleared his throat and said we should try to understand each other's sides. I turned to Rebecca and waited. She didn't apologize, not even close. She said she was sorry the post landed wrong, that I was obviously on edge and in a very sensitive place, and that if she had known, I'd go completely off the rails, she wouldn't have shared it. She made it sound like the whole thing was a miscommunication between unstable me and her harmless sense of humor. Then she said, "Besides, your daughter didn't even notice. She wasn't hurt. You just made it into a thing." I asked her if she would have liked it if someone had posted a video of her child online and called them a servant. She rolled her eyes and said, "It was a joke. A dumb, harmless joke. The only one acting like it meant something is you. And then, like she couldn't help herself, she added, honestly, it just feels like you're looking for a way to punish me, like you've been waiting to feel superior. That was when my mom stepped in again, saying, let's not turn this into a competition. Rebecca's going through a lot. She's barely making rent. You have to admit you've been helping a lot more lately. And maybe that's part of why she feels a little threatened. I asked what that had to do with my daughter being humiliated online. No one answered. Instead, Rebecca launched into a full breakdown of her financial situation, said her ex wasn't paying child support again, said she had to buy both her boys new shoes, said she had 3 bills bouncing, and no one else to help her. I'd heard it all before. Every excuse, every near emergency, every guilt trip disguised as vulnerability. Then she said, you were helping just fine before. So what changed really? You trying to prove something now? You got some new idea in your head that you're better than me. There was the real reason she was angry. Not because I'd pulled her hair or called her out, but because for the first time in years, I'd cut her off. Not just financially, but emotionally. I wasn't tolerating her anymore, and it made her furious. I told her I wouldn't be paying her rent again, that it was over. That the help I gave came from kindness, not obligation, and she stomped on it. She laughed. Not because anything was funny, because she couldn't believe I was serious. You're really going to do this, she said. Throw away your own family over Facebook post over your weird little parenting pride trip. I stood up, told my daughter to grab her book. She did without a word. As we walked to the door, Rebecca said, you really think you're better than me, don't you? I stopped, looked at her one last time. Then I left without answering, and that was it. That was the last time I stepped foot in that house. I thought walking out of my parents' house would be the end of it. I figured Rebecca would sulk, complain to anyone who'd listen, and eventually move on to some other poor soul who hadn't learned the hard way yet. She always bounced back, usually by landing in someone else's wallet. I didn't think twice about it until 2 weeks later when I got a message from someone I barely knew. It was one of Rebecca's old neighbors, a woman I'd only spoken to once when she helped me carry groceries into Rebecca's place during one of her panic weeks. The message said, sorry if this is weird, but I thought you should know your sister's moving out. There's kids' clothes and toys by the dumpster, and it looks like she's selling stuff. She didn't look okay. I didn't reply. I just sat there with the message on my screen while my daughter was in the next room building a Lego tower. That night we were driving home from Target, and I made a decision without really thinking. I drove past Rebecca's townhouse. The blinds were off, front door wide open. One of her boys sat on the front step eating cereal out of a mixing bowl. He was watching something on a cracked tablet, legs swinging like he'd been out there a while. Inside it looked empty. Not packed up, empty, hollow. There were boxes, sure, but no couches, no shelves, no coffee table. Just laundry piles and a cheap mattress pushed against the living room wall. I kept driving. My daughter didn't ask questions. The next morning my mom called. Her voice sounded thick, like she'd been crying. She told me Rebecca and the boys were moving into a 2-bedroom apartment across town, half the size. She said Rebecca couldn't keep up with rent anymore. And then, after a pause, she told me she and my dad had decided to step in, that they'd be helping with rent now. I didn't say anything at first. Then she asked the question she'd been holding on to. Are you happy now? It wasn't a real question. It was an accusation. I told her I didn't feel happy. I just felt done. I said I was tired of being expected to fund someone else's cruelty. And then she hit me with, don't come running to us next time you need help. I said I wouldn't, and I meant it. That might have been the end of it except for what happened a few days later. I got an email from my bank. 3 failed login attempts from an unrecognized device. Then another email about a denied password reset. I froze. I hadn't told anyone about it, not even my daughter. I changed everything right away. Passwords, security questions, linked accounts. I even pulled my credit report just to be safe. The bank flagged it and said they'd monitor the account. I didn't need confirmation. I knew who it was. I didn't confront her. I didn't tell my parents. I said nothing. Just kept it close. Then the cherry on top. A Facebook post from Rebecca. A sad, vague plea for donations. Something about falling on hard times. Doing it all for the kids. Needing a fresh start. No apology. No explanation. Just a link to a GoFundMe. My daughter saw it over my shoulder. She leaned in and asked, is that the aunt who called me a servant? I hesitated. Asked if she remembered that. She said, I didn't say anything because I didn't want you to cry again. That one sentence hit harder than anything else. She had noticed all of it. The video, the tension, my tears in the kitchen that night. I'd been so focused on protecting her from the storm. I didn't realize she'd already been standing in the rain. That night, after she went to bed, I pulled out a small wooden box from my closet. Inside were a few things from my husband, notes, old photos, his favorite watch, and a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop and watched a video I hadn't seen in years. He was standing in the kitchen with our daughter, helping her pour pancake batter. She was tiny, barely tall enough to reach the counter. She spilled the batter everywhere, and looked like she was about to cry, but he just laughed and said, "That's perfect. Now you know how not to do it." Then he wiped her hands and told her, "You're doing great." I sat there watching them, thinking about what kind of man he was, how he made people feel capable, how he made her feel safe. That's what I was fighting for. Not revenge, not payback, just peace, and the right kind of future. I should have known Rebecca wasn't done. Silence from her never meant peace. Meant she was working on a new angle. A few weeks went by where the only sign of her existence was that GoFundMe link floating around Facebook. Long, vague paragraphs about starting over and doing everything for her kids. No mention of why she suddenly needed help. No mention of the sister she'd publicly humiliated or the money she'd been taking for years like it was owed to her. I didn't comment. I didn't explain. I let people believe whatever version of her story they wanted. Then my cousin Julia texted me late one night. We'd grown up together, shared rooms at family reunions. But we weren't especially close anymore. She said, "I don't want to get involved, but Rebecca's telling people you attacked her in front of your kid. She's saying she's scared of you." I stared at my phone for a long time. Scared of me. The woman who mocked a child online. The woman who tried to break into my bank account. The woman who showed up at my house demanding money and forgiveness in the same breath. I didn't respond to Julia. I didn't defend myself. I was tired of explaining reality to people who preferred a simpler lie. 2 days later, my mom sent a group text. She said we should all come over for dinner, that it was time to talk things out like adults, that holding grudges was tearing the family apart. She said Rebecca would be there. She said it would be calm. She said it was important, but almost said no. But something in me wanted to see it through, not to reconcile, not to fix anything. I wanted to be certain. I wanted to hear one last time exactly who they would choose when it came down to it. We arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. The house looked the same as it always had. Same table, same place settings, same forced smiles. Rebecca was already seated, talking loudly, holding court like nothing had ever happened. My daughter walked in beside me, quiet, observant. She was wearing the same red sweater from Christmas. I hadn't noticed until Rebecca noticed. Rebecca smirked. Dinner started awkwardly. Everyone avoided the obvious until my dad cleared his throat and said we were here to move forward. My mom nodded, eyes already shiny like she'd practiced this speech. Then Rebecca took over. She said she was sorry I felt hurt by the video. She said she never intended to upset anyone. She said she didn't appreciate being physically attacked and that she'd had nightmares about it. She said she was willing to forgive me if I could admit I'd gone too far. I didn't interrupt her. I let her talk. She shifted quickly into money. How the new apartment was too small. How the boys were struggling. How she was doing everything she could. She looked at me and said I'd always been more stable, that I didn't understand how hard it was for her, that she just needed help until she got back on her feet. Then she said, "I'm not asking for everything, just what you used to give." That sentence said more than anything else. I told her I wasn't paying her rent. Not now, not ever again. Her face changed. Not sadness, not shock, anger, the kind she only showed when she lost control. She said I was selfish, that I was punishing her kids to prove a point, that I was holding a grudge, over a joke, that I'd always had a victim complex and now I was dragging my daughter into it. My mom tried to calm things down. My dad stared at the table. Then Rebecca said it. She said, "What is this really about? You trying to prove you're not a loser, that your daughter's not a loser?" Before I could respond, my daughter stood up. She didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She just picked up her coat and walked into the hallway like she'd heard enough of this before. Something in me went completely still. I stood up and told Rebecca I was done. That this was the last conversation we'd ever have. That I wasn't responsible for her life, her choices, or her comfort anymore. Then I turned to my parents and told them they were free to support her however they wanted. But I wouldn't be part of it. Not emotionally, not financially, not ever again. No one stopped me. We left in the car. My daughter buckled herself in and asked if we could get ice cream. Like this was just another errand crossed off the list. I realized then that she already understood something it took me years to learn. Walking away isn't cruel. Staying is. It's been just over 6 months now. 6 months since I stood in that dining room and watched every person at that table show me who they really were. Not through some dramatic blowout. Not through yelling or slamming doors, but through silence. Through the choice to sit there while someone insulted my daughter and asked for money in the same breath. 6 months without a call from my parents, no check-ins, no text to ask how my daughter is, not even a message on her birthday, which came 3 weeks after that dinner. She didn't ask about it. I think she knew they wouldn't reach out. I found out Rebecca moved again. Not from her, obviously. Someone forwarded me her new address after she posted a Facebook status begging for furniture donations. She's in a different part of town now. A cheaper complex with linoleum floors and plastic blinds that don't close right. According to someone who still talks to her, she's working part-time at a used furniture store and complains about her boss constantly. Her boys change schools again. He blames the system. He blames the rent. He blames me. My parents help her with rent now. Groceries too sometimes. They've convinced themselves they're doing the right thing, stepping up for a struggling daughter. The same people who used to lecture her about being irresponsible now pay her bills and tell themselves she's just having a rough year. Maybe they need to believe that. Maybe it's easier for them than facing the truth. That they raised 2 daughters and chose the one who tore things apart. The difference is I don't care anymore. There was a time when being excluded like this would have gutted me. A time when I would have gone out of my way to fix things, to explain myself, to play nice for the sake of peace. But something changed. I don't miss them. I don't miss the forced smiles, the quiet judgments, the gaslighting disguised as concern. I don't miss the way Rebecca would turn every room into a stage, and how no one ever asked why I always looked so tense. I don't miss pretending things were okay for the sake of tradition. And the best part, my daughter is thriving. She's still quiet, but she's not withdrawn. She's focused. She's learning how to cook things I didn't even try until I was in my 20s. Last week, she made a full dinner on her own. Grilled chicken with a honey lime glaze and roasted potatoes. She set the table too. Folded the napkins in perfect little triangles like she used to. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched. After dinner, I told her it was incredible. She looked at me and said, "It's kind of nice when it's just us." It is. We talk more now. We have inside jokes. We go to the farmer's market on Saturdays and make up backstories for the people selling homemade soap or baked goods. We spend Sundays testing out new recipes and dancing in the kitchen to old music she's just starting to like. We laugh more. We rest more. There's no more walking on eggshells. No more waiting for the next dig, the next favor, the next apology I wasn't sure I owed. I used to think family was something you protected no matter what. That you sacrificed your pride, your comfort, even your self-respect to keep it intact. But now I know better. Family isn't about blood. It's about safety, about trust, about the feeling you get when someone looks at you and sees you, not just what they can get from you. My parents made their choice. Rebecca made hers. And honestly, it's not that I lost them, it's that they lost me, and nothing of value was lost. Sometimes I think about what might happen if they ever showed up at my door again, if Rebecca came knocking, or if my mom called with some carefully worded apology wrapped in guilt. But the truth is, I don't wonder what I'd say. Already know. Because when someone shows you who they are again and again, you stop looking for the version you wish they were. You stop explaining. You stop inviting them back, and just to watch them burn the place down. Some people call it cutting ties. I call it finally locking the